Hello everybody, welcome to our After Hours chat here on Euronews YouTube channel where we talk about what's been happening here at COP27. I'm joined, as yesterday, by my esteemed colleague from our Brussels bureau, Gregoire Lory. Hi Gregoire.
Hi Jeremy.
Did you have a good day?
Busy day, but a good day, yes.
Yeah, you had a big day. You can tell us about your interviews. And next to us, we have Diana Ürge-Vorsatz, who is a professor at the Central European University and also an IPCC scientist. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Tell me a little bit about what your day is like as a top scientist here, representing the esteemed group of scientists who are talking about climate change. And when I look for a source and I go to the IPCC, you guys are the credible ones. What's it like for you? Does everybody keep asking you about climate change, or do you spend your time kind of wandering around going to conferences, or what goes on?
Well, I guess both. So first of all, our role is really to share our science and disseminate the knowledge that we have been gaining over the past couple of years, and to make sure that all this science is actually turned into action. So we are trying to highlight some of the key policy relevant messages, especially for governments, but of course to other policy actors as well. On the other hand, as a person who got to this place, then it's a tremendous learning opportunity, because the COP has become kind of the biggest jamboree of the year related to climate change. So here you can meet basically anyone and everyone who counts related to climate change. But also there are many institutions, many research organizations who release their latest research here. So bring everything that is new here. So you can learn so much. So we both try to present, but both try to take up lots of new knowledge.
Are there some big names you've absolutely loved meeting so far?
So far not yet. I'm first of all still trying to figure out my way around. It's not very easy to really find out where people are whom I really want to meet, but fortunately I'm here for 2 weeks, so I still have lots of opportunities. So far I really focused on giving good enough talks and being able to really use those few minutes of window of opportunity where we can finally get our knowledge to the audience where we really hope to get it to.
Yeah, Gregoire, go on.
I wonder what is a usual day for an IPCC member here in the COP. It must be over busy for you.
Certainly there's a lot going on. So usually we are invited to several events to speak, both side events, and the IPCC has its own pavilion together. Well, it's a shared pavilion, but still it's a venue. So we have lots of events going on there, but also other organizations, also the UNFCCC and others ask us for delivering talks. So we are doing these as well, but we also have just a lot of different meetings.
One of the things I think that's interesting is, as you say, there are a ton of meetings going on. There's a load of like panels and side sessions and things like that, and that really is a lot of fun. And a lot of the time I wonder, is anybody actually listening to the plenary hall? I mean, there are people in there, and I don't know whether you get access to the plenary hall, but there are people in there, but a lot of the time when you look at the pictures, they're on their laptops or on their phones. Is anybody listening to these grand speeches? Because we had a ton of speeches from prime ministers of countries all around the world today, but I was wondering, is anybody listening apart from maybe at home in their home country?
Well, I think that's a very good question. And at the end of the day, I think those speeches are not necessary for the negotiators. I think those speeches are more for the world. And in general, I think it's anyway worth thinking whether does it really make sense to try to bring all the world readers to COPs every single year? Actually, what sense does it really make when now the negotiating agenda is not that high level that you would really need a prime minister or president level negotiations or agreement? It's not like when the Paris Agreement was negotiated, or when these last really important details of implementation were negotiated. At the same time, I think the benefit is that the world is watching them, and the words for this week is really focusing on climate change, because all of them are here. That just makes so much more visibility. So there were, of course, all this criticism why they're coming here and private jets and everything. But at the end of the day, would we really have all this visibility? Would we have all the attention without that? So I think these are all very good questions. But I don't think the problem is not the negotiator who listens to them.
No, I think you're right. When you go in the press centre, it's interesting, right? There's a lot of big name channels there, big name reporters. they're there because the presidents and prime ministers are there. What do you think?
I think that's my fear, is that usually journalists will follow their head of state or government, and they might wait for one or two famous people, but they won't follow all the head of states, all the leaders, and that's a shame because you could hear so many interesting testimonies or experiences or damages. I mean, it's really, really interesting, but usually journalists are here to follow their leaders. I'm waiting to see tomorrow. Today it's the end of the World Leaders Summit. Let's see how it's going to be in this venue here in the COPE. Will there be as many journalists as today? I'm not sure. We never know. But
it seemed already to be a little bit quieter in the press room today. Certainly got that impression. And there's certainly this question of what sort of, do we all really need to come and get together, right? Because I mean, I've met you virtually several times. We've had conversations over Teams. I feel like I know you already. I mean, it's the first time we're sitting next to each other, and which is great. But, did everybody really need to come on a plane and get here? Do the scientists at your level, do you have that conversation? I mean, we do, but we don't feel like we really know enough to be able to make a judgment.
I think that's an excellent question and a very important question to ask. And as it happens to me, I'm just finished with a panel on demand and services. And that's exactly the topic of that conversation and that science. And the Working Group III report of the IPCC focused very strongly this time on how we can actually deliver all what we want to do with less energy and less emissions. And certainly virtual is a very important option for that. And as I'm speaking, yes, one of our speakers did not come in person and was speaking online, and also in the morning, actually only one of our speakers was physically here, and three of them spoke online. I think we definitely need to do this much more virtual. I personally, not as an IPCC person, but as a person, I think we need to rethink whether every year we need to really bring together 40,000, whatever, tens of thousands of people in one place for the same thing. It, of course, it is very important for the parties to come together and to negotiate, but do we always want to make this really big event which drives incredibly high total prices and air and a lot of flying related emissions? Maybe we could focus much more on doing this much more in a much more hybrid way, or every second year so big.
Absolutely. Go on.
Tell me, Jerry, for journalists like us covering climate questions, it is a rare opportunity. Imagine, I mean, you can meet all the scientists you were looking for the whole year. Tell me, what is your feeling? I mean, it's you can pick up whoever you want to interview.
It's completely divided on it. I wish it was happening in a place we could, as a European, I could get to easily on the train. If it was in Paris, or it was in Geneva, or if it was in Frankfurt or something, it would be a lot easier for me. But I guess for the people here, it's not the same experience. So everybody wants to have that. But it would be great if we could all kind of come together virtually, certainly, and have conversations. But when I'm on the bus, and I like taking the bus here, and you meet negotiators, and I've met a few negotiators. I was talking to a man from Jordan today, and he was telling me a little bit about his work, and obviously it's a bit confidential, so I won't tell you everything he was telling me, but you got the impression that for him it's really important to get face-to-face with people. But this is a guy who's working for the Jordanian government, looking at loss and damage issues, looking at how they're going to manage drought, looking at how they're going to adapt, and he needs to be able to there negotiating deals and looking at money and financial flows and things. It makes a lot of sense for them to be there, I think. But afterwards you do wonder, do we need this? As you say, it's a jamboree. And when we turned up at the airport, you thought, these people, they all know each other, and it's like they're having their party, they all get together again. Does that really sort of make sense? Did you have that feeling too?
True. But it's the same questions we have every year. Is it worth traveling all around the world for 2 weeks? Of course, it's a question we can raise. But when you need to negotiate, you need to meet people, and we talk about billions, trillions of dollars, euros. So you can't remotely. You can't say, okay, let's bet on $100 billion a year. So we need to find maybe the right balance, the right calendar. Maybe once a year, maybe that's too much. But it is highly useful to be here.
Yeah, well, next year, of course, they're going to be talking about the global stock take, right? It's time to turn up and say, here's what I've actually managed to achieve. And when you look back at some, the promises that have been made, 2009 was when they said they were going to come up with 100 billion a year from the rich countries to the poor countries. And now we're at the point where we might attain that. That was 2009 they first came forward with that. It takes a long time. Paris Agreement was 2015. That was ages ago.
Yes, but do you remember loss and damage that was first raised 30 years ago? You imagine, 30 years, and now they had to negotiate 48 hours to put it on the agenda.
Yeah. Why is this taking so long, do you think?
Well, I think that's a very good question, why all of this is taking so long. I mean, 30 years ago, the IPCC has already said that we are in big trouble. And suddenly we are here when the Secretary General of UN has to say that, we have our foot on the accelerator and we are running into our own demise. So why aren't we listening? I think that's a very difficult.
We need like systemic change, right? When you look at the emissions gap report, that's what it's saying. It's saying systemic change, which is basically sort of the UN saying, please just stop everything. But is anybody listening to them?
But that's not what we are saying. I don't think anybody is saying stop everything, but there is a lot that needs to happen. And here I want to go back to your previous question and why I also believe it is very important for negotiators to be here and together and sit in the same room, sit next to each other, because otherwise in the world you never have, let's say, a US negotiator meet in person, let's say from the person from Senegal. It doesn't matter really which countries, but those who have this historical responsibility for the impacts of climate change with those who perhaps are right now suffering the biggest floods or the biggest hurricanes and have major problems. So that personal connection that you are, let's say, for example, in IPCC negotiations, I always sit next to the Indians because of alphabetical order. We have a special relationship. You never know what kind of coincidence here makes you really good friends with someone with whom otherwise you will have nothing to do with. And these relationships, I think, in the end will help solve this issue.
For those who are wondering, that's because Diana is Hungarian. I know you're all doing that, going, hang on, where's she from? Honduras? So I guess you are sitting next to the Indians. Yeah, so do you get to know each other or kind of have little chats and go out?
Definitely. We have very good relationship with the Indians, and that has been helping in many different ways. And
do you take them out for a goulash, and do they take you out for some Indian food?
Not that much, but definitely the Indian negotiator used to help with my baby, and he has very intimate relationship with already now not a baby anymore, but he's always asking how my little son is doing and so on. So.
How sweet is that? That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
And do you see them outside the COP? Because for me, for instance, with journalists or people, I see them once a year during the COP. It is the place where I bumped into people. They belong to the COP, that's all. I don't know if it's the same for you with your colleagues to whom you're sitting next to.
We only see them not in the COPs. I was talking about the IPCC negotiations because here in the COPs I don't negotiate, but as a bureau member in the IPCC I do take part in negotiations, and they are different negotiators but the same kind of UN negotiators. We don't meet beyond this, and maybe it wouldn't necessarily be appropriate, I think, but nobody can prohibit that you do develop personal relationships with others and friendships, and it really helps tremendously every negotiation. And even if you have certain official lines to represent, that personal relationship often helps to break the difficult knots and to bring the solutions that are otherwise impossible. So that's why I don't think online this would work. So even if we get all the criticism, and I fully agree, and I really work on the demand side, and it's very important to reduce aviation, but there are certain things we cannot do online and would just not happen, and we do have to have these emissions. I just think that we cannot do it without. But I don't think necessarily that all the 40,000 or whoever, how many tens of thousands people need to be here. And for example, you mentioned that it's great to meet the scientists whom you have been waiting for or longing for meeting for a long time. But couldn't we have just a special stand where we invite, let's say, every day 2 or 3 of the special scientists who is projected on the big screen and can be interviewed by those media people who are interested. So I think we can be still more innovative about avoiding many of the emissions or making this big jamboree just every second or third year.
Thinking of jamboree, and I know yesterday we had the big moment where we tested some vegan food. And that was a big moment, I think, for all of us, because it was pretty spicy, but it was really nice. And today, I've really gone for it, because I've got the special COP water, which we're going to try. It says good water on there, so you know that it's good. There we go, it says it on the label. If we actually get into this, it's quite fun. I haven't got my glasses, but anyway. The cap, right, that means this plastic bit there, is made of plant-based plastic extracted from sugarcane. So it's a sugarcane cap. That's quite impressive, actually. A hard plastic cap like that made from plastic. Sorry, I got away from the microphone. Hard plastic caps made from sugarcane. Actually not an easy thing to do. So well done, whoever did this. Packaging produced with renewable raw materials of plant-based origin, or trees, as I often call them. And it says, apparently, by choosing this product, you help take care of the world's forests. I learn more from FSC. Actually, I am going to be talking to FSC later on this week, and FSC do a great job of managing forests, and I think they do good work. Let's try the water, shall we? This has come from Italy, though, and you do wonder how sustainable was that. It was packaged in Italy, Italian water. I mean, I like Italian water, but do I need to have Italian water in Egypt? I don't know. Ready? Ready? Are you ready to taste what good water tastes like? There is a slight hint of cardboard, but it's all right. It's okay, it's a bit warm. Any feedback on the good water?
You can drink it.
You can drink it, yeah. I tell you what, food here has been difficult. Have you been managing to get any food?
Yeah, it has been challenging. But coming back to your water, yes, perhaps it tastes a bit like cardboard, but it's better than if it takes like plastic. I don't think that most of our viewers or most of your viewers realize that just, for example, from a cup of tea that has a plastic, that has your tea bag in a plastic wrapping, involves millions of microplastic particles that you swallow just from that tea bag. So certainly having a cardboard is better.
You're going to put me off my tea if you come out with that. Are you serious?
No, just why don't you use the regular tea bags which used to be paper?
I like those, but it's quite hard to buy where I live in France. But no, they are the best. To give you the best tea as well. Microplastics, that's amazing, isn't it, when you get into the details of where it's coming from people's clothes and getting out into the water, basically. Even if they've got a filter in the water treatment plants, apparently what happens is that sludge that they pick up, which is really good quality sludge, they go and stick it on a farmer's field, then it rains, and then all of the little plastic bits end up in the ocean. That's not going to, we're not going to fix that, are we?
I think we will have to, because I think after climate change, this will be the next big thing. If we solve climate change, we really have serious health problems from microplastics. Just think about that. The demand of plastic production tripled just in 2 decades. And with a lot of the oil companies realizing that they have to get out of oil sooner or later, they are putting enormous investments into new plastic capacities. And they are going to try to sell that plastic. So we are going to see plastic just like around us. Here we basically see everything around us is plastic. But all of this has tremendous microplastic pollution. And by now we have seen microplastic in breast milk. Can you imagine? Not only placenta, breast milk, in the brain, in our blood, everywhere. And we know that there are quite strong health impacts from that. So I think we will need to address that as well, together with climate change.
Oh my goodness me, it's cheerful talking to you. I'm feeling like, Gregoire, tell us something fun that's happened. No, you're right though, it is really important. I want to talk to you though about you're really good on building renovation, because that's kind of your kind of core specific thing that you're excellent at. Tell us a little bit about some of the retrofitting things that you've been doing, because you're taking old buildings and turning them into kind of emissions-free buildings, right? You've been doing some cool stuff. Tell us a bit about what's possible.
Right, and not only emissions free, but basically energy plus. So what we are talking about is turning old buildings into new power plants, the power plants of the 21st century. Of course, it's a bit of an exaggeration from the perspective that they don't produce that much power in Europe altogether, but they on an annual basis they do produce more energy.
Talk me through. What do you do? I've got an old house, right, really old, probably like really old, like made out of stone, and old beams and all that kind of stuff. If I want to turn that into a little energy plant, what do I do?
It wouldn't be you. You would have to ask for an expert. But that's my favorite topic because we are working very hard on turning the biggest Art Nouveau building complex, which is in Vienna, designed by Otto Wagner. It's called Otto Wagner Area, to also turn that into a power plant complex, or just energy positive district, which means that it will produce more energy than it consumes while maintaining the natural heritage level or respecting that to the maximum level. So what it involves is that certain insulation, and you have to do it in tricky ways because you don't want to destroy the appearance of the building. So usually it's inside insulation or vacuum insulation, which doesn't hurt. But the most important is to fix the thermal bridges, because most of these buildings have a lot of thermal bridges and a lot of leaks.
Hang on. I don't know what a thermal bridge is.
Sorry about that. Absolutely. So the most typical thermal bridge in a building is, for example, apartment buildings with balconies, and the concrete slab just goes right from your floor out to your balcony, and that means that, for example, if you air condition, then the nice coolness just goes, the concrete right takes it out of your building and the heat into your building. Vice versa, also if you have cold outside, and that can conduct the heat to the outside, but also then leaks. Most of our buildings have a lot of leaks, so you have to make the building airtight, which people get worried about because then you worry about air quality. But in fact, these high efficiency buildings have much better indoor air quality because they do have to have ventilation system, heat recovery ventilation system, and they have a lot of benefits because if you have an office building or a school, through this ventilation system, you really reduce the infection of respiratory illnesses. So you reduce COVID, and also people will be more fresh, they can study better. So all in all, they have so many. But the biggest benefit now is really the energy costs.
So sealing it off. Basically, sealing off your house is the trick, is what you're saying, towards energy. Not sticking more insulation in my roof or solar panels on my roof or whatever. In fact, it's sealing the space somehow.
Basically has three tricks. One is sealing them off, but you also have to have very good insulation on your floor and your ceiling as well, and all throughout, all your building envelope has to be insulated. And then you have to have the ventilation with heat recovery so that you keep that heatness or coolness inside. But it's really amazing because ultimately, in most of the buildings in Europe, we have more than enough heating inside. Just you and me and your dog and your computer and your lighting provides enough energy to heat that building. You don't need to bring in any fossil fuel or any energy to heat that, except if you weren't at home for the weekend or something like that, and it's extremely cold. So, for example, passive houses need heating in the UK maybe just a dozen of days a year. And in today's energy crisis, that's the solution for getting rid of imported natural gas. It's not necessarily hydrogen or liquefied natural gas and all these other new fossil fuel infrastructures, but simply we don't need to burn this natural gas. We don't need that natural gas. We would rather need to fix our buildings, which would not only solve our energy independence issues, which would also help with the families with the inflation. Every family struggles with the high energy costs. If you don't have heating bill, that certainly helps a lot. This will help with health, this will help with fuel poverty and many other issues. So I think that's a really important solution. But the challenge is really the financing. So governments need to stand up and help with the financing because most homeowners don't have the capital. It pays back, but still you need the capital up front.
So now you know all you have to do for your house.
I mean, no, but it is fascinating, though, isn't it? What did you learn a bit there? I mean, I do.
Oh yes, of course. I've learned. That's what I expected, but I've learned a lot, and I didn't imagine all these layers and all that was possible today. I mean, I thought we still needed a bit of heat. I didn't expect that through human body, dogs, computers, that was actually enough. But it is very interesting. Yeah.
Let's move away to the world of politics, which you've been inhabiting today. You spoke to Charles Michel today. Just tell us a little bit about what happened there. What did he have to say?
He emphasized the fact that all the global north had to do their job regarding climate change, and not only Europe. I think that the message was towards the United States. Everyone has to do their share of the work, and that of course Europe wants to be a leader, whatever the situation is. Even though there's an energy crisis, the war on the continent, and he was here to show the international community that the EU will stick to its climate track, even though it's going to be difficult. But that's, I think, what he wanted to say, and that's what he said during his speech in the plenary.
Okay, I'm going to wrap things up pretty soon, but I'll tell everybody quickly what I did today, which is pretty fun. As I talked to Jean-Pierre Gattuso, who is from who was actually an IPCC contributor for the Working Group I, so on a physical basis, and he is an expert in ocean acidification, which is a miserable business where you basically get CO2 from the atmosphere, from us burning fossil fuels, absorbed into the ocean and making it slightly more acidic, which is a problem 30 years down the line. It's not particularly posing a problem at the moment, but we also talked about ocean heat waves with him. All of the Mediterranean experienced some kind of ocean heat wave this year, which was awful, and it has a destructive effect, particularly because it gets repeated, and so you get more and more of these, and some species die off. Some of them might survive for a little bit, but then they'll hang on for another couple of years and then they'll disappear. And he said you don't end up with a vacuum, you end up with invasive species from the Red Sea, maybe from here, that have come over in some water from another boat, and they're making their way through through the Suez Canal, right? And they turn up and then they make their way across the Mediterranean, or they come in from somewhere else where they've got warmer waters and they take over. And there's not really an awful lot you can do about it, although he was saying if they can manage to meet the 1.5 degree goals of the Paris Agreement, then you will start to have fewer of these heat waves in the Mediterranean, and you will start to have a kind of recovery. But he said it'll never go back to what it was before, what it was like when we were kids if you went on a holiday to the Mediterranean. And that is always a bit sad, isn't it, when you hear about that? I mean, you're a top scientist on this stuff, but you must have moments when you just go...
Absolutely. But definitely we do have to accept that the life is changing, and some sorts of change we do need to put up with. In fact, we have to find the positive aspect of that. That has been a very legitimate question to me also in climate change, that, you know, if everything in life and universe and history and civilization is always changing, why is it climate that we really want to kind of conserve as we, just because we're used to something? So that was perhaps the most difficult question for me to answer myself for a long time. But now the science is really clear about that. Simply civilization is so much tuned to a certain temperature that it will be just very difficult for us to adapt. And the Working Group II has highlighted how many limits we have to adaptation, but certainly some of these we have to get used to. And maybe we will find the plus side of many of these things. For example, you talked about buildings. Yes, it will be very nice to have slightly warmer winters in Europe and have to be less reliant on natural gas imports and in general heating. At the same time, cooling is a big challenge. It's bigger and bigger also in Europe. And I think this is not where we want to learn it from. This place is extremely overcooled, and that's surprising to me, to be honest, because I'm sure that Egyptians are in general not used to cooling being pervasive everywhere.
Oh, no. We could probably talk for another hour about the state of the air conditioning here, which is extremely wasteful. And you must be looking at the way that the cool is coming out those open doors all the time and just thinking how awful, how you had a thermal map of what's going on over there. You just think, oh my goodness, what a waste. Anyway, I think that's probably all we got time for. We're going to have a nice drink of good water. Thank you for watching. Send us your comments on social media. We would love to hear what you think. And my thanks to Diana Ürge-Vorsatz from the Central European University and to Gregoire Lory from our Brussels bureau at Euronews. My name's Jeremy Wilks. I make a programme called Climate Now. Have a look on euronews.com/climate now and you can find out the facts about how our planet is changing. We'll see you soon. Thank you.